Mm, great, great flavor there from the Fig Newton. Mm.
That's a great way to start off this episode.
I agree. Thank you. Very tasty. And I'm pretty sure. Okay, I titled this episode uh Final Cut Pro. That happened this past week, right? Or am I like
E-
dumb?
I think so, right?
Like we didn't already talk about this, right? I don't think we did.
I don't think so. I want to check. Final Cut Pro
Yeah, let me check
iPad.
in my videos here. Yeah, May 9th. So 5 days ago is when it came out.
Okay, good. So
Whenever things
that's
happen on like
good.
Sunday or on like Monday or Tuesday, I completely forget that they happened by the time we get to dark mode. That's the problem.
Yeah, that's understandable. Part of
So
the
because I'm not
challenge.
very smart, I'm not very intelligent, it's an obstacle. I'm working on it, but no guarantees.
I mean, that's part of the challenge of having a Sunday night show. But I was gonna say we knew the risks when we started this, but I'm not sure if that's true.
No, we didn't. We absolutely had no idea what we were getting ourselves into, which is also an accurate statement in regards to our event.
That is extremely accurate.
Do you guys know how much it costs to put on an event? We were like, "Oh, we're just doing a small event, right? It's not a huge venue. It's not a name brand venue. It's a full service venue, right? So they do all the like uh, they like let people in and they tell you where to go, right? We're thinking, how hard could that be? How many tens of thousands of dollars could that possibly be? And they were like, oh boy, let me tell you something.
Okay, I'll be honest, like it is definitely very expensive. Maybe more so than I thought. I feel like okay, I don't know. I don't know what I thought, but like I don't know. But what I'll say is I guess the real thing for me is that we definitely underestimated how much like effort and work it was going to take to do this.
Yeah,
We've been working on
yeah,
this for the entire year. We started at the
yeah.
end of last year. We've been working on it for the entire year. 5
Mm-hmm.
months at least that we've been
Mm-hmm.
working on this. Like it's a lot of work.
Dude, and as pointed out here by Toad, 23 days to go. 23
That's
days to go.
scary. I don't want to hear the
That
number.
is
It still
scary.
feels like it's, let's just say it's weeks away. That feels a little bit
Yeah,
less
I like
sudden.
that. And
Yeah.
we are almost sold out of the VIP tickets. So I'm just saying, if you're on the fence, if you're like, oh, I don't know, maybe we shouldn't go. Maybe I'd go, but I kind of want to meet Noah Rubin, you know?
Of course. I
If
mean,
that's what you're after, well, chop chop, because we are down to I think it's less than 20 on the VIP. So like don't waste any time.
yeah, that was also another surprise. Like we've sold a lot of VIP tickets. Like not that I didn't think
Yeah.
we were going to sell a good amount of them, but like we've sold more VIP tickets than I was expecting, and they were definitely running out on them.
Yeah, that was not what I expected at all. Someone is
At
asking
all.
at all. Also, I got to book my plane tickets to SF. Got to
You
do
haven't
that.
done that yet?
No.
Bro, you got to
Well,
do
cuz I'm not
that.
sure if I'm going to go to LA afterwards for a little bit or not. So, who knows. But they asked how expensive. How expensive is it to hold the event? Let's just say, hmm, you could buy a very decent car,
Oh yeah.
like you even a new one.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Ugh. Very good point here by Ghosts for Sarcasm. Or is that Ghosts Ghosts Ghost Street 4R Scream? I have no earthly clue
It's
what.
Ghost Star Scream.
Ah, good. Okay, well, why would they support Sam? Screw you. John here wants to
Hi,
go to LA
John.
afterwards. How's John doing? Oh, look at that. What a great time. I will say the best part about planning this event has been that the four of us have gone and like we got to go to see the venue in person. We got to hang out a whole bunch. We got to have like lots of meetings that were definitely all productive and we didn't waste any time.
No, not at all. But
Not one
it
second.
was it was I will say it was very frustrating trying to get everyone to actually focus on the task at hand, but it was a lot of
Sorry,
fun.
mom.
When we weren't trying to be productive, it was a lot of fun hanging out. So I
Sorry,
enjoyed it a lot.
mom.
It's
My
okay.
bad.
You know what? As long as this event goes on, as long as we do something in 23 days, then it's okay.
Yeah, honestly. Oh gosh, I gotta book those tickets. All right. Should we play it? Should we play a game of how expensive is it gonna be to go? Oh gosh.
Are you booking your tickets to
Well, I'm
SF?
just checking. Yeah, I'm just checking right now. Because the I feel like whenever I fly to from east to west coast, I'm either like eye-wateringly appalled at how much it is, or I'm like, you know what? That's not bad.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like if you're coming here on a Saturday, like in the
Mm.
summer, I think it's gonna be a bit more on the expensive side.
Yeah, you make a good point there. So that's gonna be like June 4th to you know what? As long as I fly out on Wednesday the 7th, it's not bad. If I stay
Okay.
longer than that, it gets so it's $443 if I stay through the 7th. It's 570 if I stay longer.
And you better get out of here.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. Maybe I'll get there. Let me see what if I got there earlier? Let's see what that does. We fly econ here because we hope we're going to get upgrades, but we're not going to pay for them.
And
All
unlike
right,
me, you
four
actually have a
sixty
chance.
three. Oh no, 463. If I leave at 6 a.m. Oh God,
Mm,
I might have to leave at 6 a.m.
that's fun.
because it's $650 if I try to leave at a reasonable hour. Oh God.
Jeez.
Add that to the expenses of this. This is an expensive event that we're doing, Noah. I don't even know if we're going to make any money from it, but my goodness.
I will say that we are extremely thankful to our sponsor, MacPaw, who we will mention
Oh
in the
yeah.
episode as well. But
Yeah,
without
well, we should
them,
start the episode.
yeah, let's get started here.
I agree. Welcome to Dark Mode, the podcast that brings you sage advice from two technology experts. And that's not just what we call ourselves, it's what our moms tell people on their own day. And they brag about us because of how good they did with these experts that they made. That's us. Hi, mom. I'm your host,
Yay.
Luke Miani.
And I'm your host, Noah Rubin. On this show, we take questions from listeners, attempt to answer them to varying degrees of success, and maybe even have a laugh or two along the way.
Today is an interesting day because I don't think either of us were prepared for the news that we got this week.
No, not at all.
And that is that Final Cut Pro and Logic Pro are officially launched for the iPad. We do have a bit of time before they come out. I think it's May 23rd or 24th. I don't remember which.
I think it's the 23rd. I think. I don't know. I'm just guessing.
I think that sounds right. Either way, I I honestly was not expecting us to get this feature this year, if at all, because they've put it off for so long. I was like, wow, okay, sure, maybe they'll get to it eventually. But what's interesting is that they have only made it available for Final Cut Pro on M1 or M2 iPads. So that's going to be the current and previous generation 11 and 12.9 inch iPad Pros and the current and previous generation iPad Air. Actually, wait, no, there is no M2 iPad Air, right?
I
I don't
don't
think so.
think so.
All right, so the current generation iPad Air. There you go. And that's a little weird to me for one reason and one reason alone. And that is that the A12X and Z were the very chips that Apple demonstrated Final Cut Pro on when they announced the Apple Silicon transition 3 years ago. Do you remember that? They showed how many streams of 4K footage it could run and how fast the A12X and Z was. And then they launched Final Cut Pro and they said, "Oh, we changed our mind. Those things are so slow. They can't do anything, bro. You need a new one."
That is interesting. I actually forgot that they even demoed it on the A12X or the A12Z or whatever it was. I guess I can see why they did this from a marketing perspective, because we've talked before on the show about, like, you know, at least, for me, I still have the 2018 iPad Pro. That I
Yeah.
bought it back when it came out in 2018, and I have no reason to upgrade it. And that was the thing we've talked about, how Apple, like, they basically made it too good out of the gate that, like, even years later, there's no reason. And
I've
there's
got
your
mine too.
2018. Yep.
Mine's even the base model. I got 64 gigabytes on this boy.
I went for the
It's a little
256, and I'm
dusty.
glad that I did
Yeah, I should
for the
have done that.
iPad.
Now, to be fair enough, I don't actually use my iPad all that much, as evidenced by, I don't know if you can see this. If I turn it in the light, you can see the dust ring from where the Magic Keyboard
Oh,
camera cut out.
I do see it a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, it's well, I personally think that this could bring some life back to the iPad, because from until now they've literally been advertising this thing as being like iMovie, GarageBand, and I'm like, nobody wants to spend $1,000 to do iMovie. No.
Yeah, that's true. I think, I'm very curious to hear what you say about it, because I am a very occasional video editor.
Mm,
I don't use, when I do edit videos, I use Final Cut Pro on my Mac, but it's pretty rare that I make a video. And you obviously, do it far, far, far more than I do. But I just can't imagine doing it on an iPad, like using Final
yeah.
Cut with, like, touch screen to edit. Like, I don't know. What do you think about how that experience is going to go?
Honestly, it's I I don't really know what to think, in all truth, because I there is an element of bias to it, which is that I have been using Final Cut Pro. Well, not even Final Cut Pro 10. I started with Final Cut Pro 7. And so did you, as a matter of fact,
Yep.
in like 2011 ish.
Yeah.
I switched to Final Cut Pro in 2013. So I've been using Final Cut Pro 10 almost the entire time it's existed. And that means that it has it has exclusively been mouse and keyboard or trackpad and keyboard. So the muscle memory, and even you as a more occasional user, like you've done this over so long a period of time that I don't see it being easy to unlearn and retrain that muscle memory. Now, when you have the Magic Keyboard, I think that's going to help because I'm all about the keyboard shortcuts. I have a Final Cut claw. It's this right here, my Final Cut claw, because I do this all the time. And what that is I have one finger ready. That's the ring finger. That's ready for A to go back to the timeline scrubber. I've got index and middle finger here for VBN, and I've got the thumb for the space bar. Those things are crucial.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think, like, obviously there's the muscle memory part of like you're so used to doing things, and even like you said, I don't do Final Cut nearly as much as you do, but I do have like the muscle memory for like quickly, like, oh, I'm watching a clip and I want to cut out part of it. I hit what is it, V or whatever, to get the cut tool, and I cut it and I hit A to go back to the mouse, right? So things like that. I'm just wondering, on the iPad, first of all, obviously, if you have the Magic Keyboard with like the trackpad on it, you can probably get somewhat similar to the Mac experience. But a lot of the pictures in like the promotional material, it was just the iPad itself with no case at all, which is really weird to me. How do you do like precision, like cuts and how do you deal with that? That's the whole thing. And then I'm also curious, like running this on an 11-inch screen is going to be kind of tight. I mean, I guess you can do, you could do it on a 13-inch laptop, but like an 11-inch iPad, I don't know, it might be a bit cramped.
I really think the 12.9-inch iPad Pro is going to be a necessity. I cannot imagine legitimately attempting to edit a piece of content. Not even just like, obviously they showed it as being like, you can make your whole movie studio, right? Look at their webpage. Bring your entire studio to your shoot. Yeah, okay. My entire studio is going to need more than 11 inches to edit on. Look at this example here, right? Lots of clips on the right side, which curiously is reverse of how it is by default on the Mac. Not sure why. Down below, it's a weird looking timeline that they've got here, but it apparently is just a roll, a couple of titles, and then 3 tracks of audio, 3 layers of audio, I should say. So that's easy enough. If that's what we're looking at here, take a little bit of, it looks like voiceover, a couple sound effects, and a music track, and then some titles, some built-in titles. Okay, fine. That makes sense. But they also showed a lot of other stuff. Like if we go down in here, like they've got this guy who's out in a field on a picnic blanket editing a glass blowing video. That's good. Where was the? Oh yeah, look at this. They've got this live drawing feature, right? Cool idea. I like that. Effectively, you can make your own animations. That is sick. But what about keyframing, masking? When I mask something off in a video, very often it's point by point, going around doing all these little masking things, getting all the little corners, even editing down footage, bro. Sometimes you got to use those arrow keys and get it exactly frame by frame to find where to cut it, round off your audio so that you don't get clipping. Like, I really don't know how you would be able to do that with your finger.
Right. And, honestly, now that I'm looking at this and really thinking about it, the answer might be that you just can't, right? Maybe,
Yeah.
but I mean, I know it's kind of funny, but like you said, you're looking at this example here. There's the one layer of video with a bunch of different clips cut up in it. There's a layer of titles on top, and then 3 layers of audio. And like you said, that's fairly simple, fairly straightforward. I see they have some like fades on the audio clips, and obviously they cut down the video, pretty tightly and put titles, whatever. And maybe, if you're the kind of person that is just going to be, using your finger or the Apple Pencil, maybe that's as far as you can really get with that. And, some people who are doing more simple things, maybe they could use iMovie, but they're using this, or maybe they need a bit more power than iMovie, a bit, some other features that iMovie doesn't have, but that's not as, they don't need all that precision. Maybe they'll do that. And then the next step up is, you attach the keyboard, and now you have the keyboard and the trackpad. And then maybe the next step from that is the laptop. Like maybe you can't fully replace Final Cut on the computer with the iPad. First of all, there are features in Final Cut for Mac that are not in the iPad version. Some of the advanced features like motion tracking, they mention it somewhere on that page. But maybe the iPad, version is never meant to be, at the same level as the Mac version. It's maybe sort of one step down, but it's certainly a lot higher than iMovie for iPad.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, again, this might be biased. I think iMovie is harder to use than Final Cut Pro because it tries to do too much for you, or it like tries to do all the transitions and fades, and like you can't really choose. Like when you do a transition in iMovie, you just choose how long the transition is. It doesn't give you the flexibility to move the transition around in the clip and adjust the length like intuitively. I honestly think if they made Final Cut Pro and just took out like half the features and made it super basic, that would be better than iMovie, because iMovie is too it's too much. It's trying to do too much for you when it really should just be simple and let you figure it out. Because really, the thing that I love about Final Cut Pro is the magnetic timeline, the fact that it's so intuitive and it makes a lot of sense. I have tried many times using DaVinci Resolve, which is great for color, but not, in my opinion, for editing, or Premiere. It's just not it's not as intuitive. And I know that some people will still say, sure, Final Cut Pro is maybe not as pro as Premiere Pro. Fair. A lot of the television and movie industry doesn't use Final Cut Pro because they want to have access to more features. And that's fine. I'm a YouTuber. I'm not going to like, there are a lot of YouTubers out here that kind of cosplay as television producers, and they're like, I need the best in the world. No, it's fine. Final Cut Pro is probably the best video editor for like 90% of video editors out there. But to your point, Noah, not really sure about how it's implemented here. And I think you're right. Some features you just won't be able to do. Now, they do have, we should talk about the specific things that they have introduced to try to get around that limitation. So the first one here is the jog wheel. So this, I think, is a good idea. They basically just copy and pasted this UI from the camera app, and it will allow you to fine tune and go more frame by frame through your video. I was looking on here, and the one thing that I don't see that is perplexing to me is I don't see a blade tool. Oh, I do. I'm lying. So look down on the bottom right of this screen. You can see there's a little delete trash can. There's a check mark, presumably for like cropping, or I don't know what that would be for. But then there are 3 clips. It looks like a split clip button and a trim to start and trim to end button. So theoretically, if you're trying to get very precise, Could you use a combination of the jog wheel to go frame by frame and then split clips or trim the clip with those buttons down there? I guess that would kind of work.
Yeah, I think like I'm just trying to like the way that I usually do it. And again, it goes back to that magnetic timeline that you were talking about. When you bring up the blade tool, you can have it like snap onto where there's other things. Like for example, if you stick a title like above your video, but like in the middle of the video, you can
Yeah.
take the blade tool and it'll snap to the beginning and the end of the title, and you can just click. You can be like, oh, I want to trim the middle of this video to match the title, and it just snaps and you just click, and then you delete the beginning and the end part. Just an example, but like I find
Yeah.
myself more often like putting on the blade tool and then clicking somewhere to delete, as opposed to going to that place and then saying split here or trim here. So maybe again, that's like a
That's
different
very
muscle
true.
memory that you think about. Like you just do it differently on the iPad. Maybe you can do the tap to
Actually,
split. I don't know.
that that brings up an interesting point, which is when you actually are using Final Cut Pro, one of the most one of the things that absolutely is a must is being able to grab the end of the clip with your mouse and drag and adjust it. To your point with the magnetic stuff, right? You can, let's say in this case, you have like 2 seconds of video and then your title, you want it to match. Well, you can drag your title out and snap it to the video, or you can drag your video in and snap it to the title. Those dragging and snapping things are part of what makes Final Cut Pro so intuitive. And I mean, you don't have a mouse unless you have a keyboard, right? If you have the keyboard, perhaps it's more normal, right? With the Magic Keyboard, because you've got a trackpad there, it brings up the mouse. The mouse on the iPad already has like magnetic snapping on the regular interface, so that would probably be normal. But without it, how do you do that? I think you would probably have to do a two-step thing. You'd probably have to tap the clip you want to highlight it and then grab the edge of it and drag it with your finger. I imagine it'll still be magnetic, but that's a little bit more that's an extra step that you don't have to take on the desktop.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Like you'd probably tap on a clip and then there would be like little handles on the beginning and end that you could drag
Yeah.
around. But then what if the clip is really tiny? Like in that screenshot, there's some really tiny clips. You have to like
Yeah.
zoom in and then tap it and move it around and zoom out. Maybe you have to do it on the Mac too,
Yeah.
but again, it's less precise and it's maybe even another step there.
So, is this a video? Yes. Okay, good. I want to pull up some of the videos here so we can see this in action. Oh, we're all immediately right. Oh, what? Wait, did you see that? A
I'm
lot
not
just happened
sure.
in this video. I'm going to have to
Okay.
describe this. Okay. So the first thing he does is tap on the clip, and sure enough, those yellow handles come up. He
Yep.
uses the jog wheel to move the clip, not the playhead. And then he's using the Apple Pencil hover mode to scrub through that. So this
Hmm.
raises a lot of questions. A lot of questions. Number one, uh, the jog wheel presumably is doing two things. It's either moving your playhead or moving a clip that you've selected. So that's fine. Sure. Go for it. But the second thing is the Apple Pencil. He's using the Apple Pencil hover mode to scroll through. I what do you call that? Scrubbing, I guess. He's scrubbing through it with the Apple Pencil in hover mode. That I really hope is not the only way to do that, because scrubbing through clips is extremely integral to Final Cut Pro. But in this particular instance, you would effectively be limiting the capability of scrubbing through footage to the new M2 iPad Pros with Apple Pencils, which is a very like it's already limited in M1 and M2 iPad Pros. Then you're limiting it yet again. I
Yeah,
really hope there's another way to do that.
I wonder if there's a way. How would you do it otherwise? Because the whole point of the scrubbing is you're not like clicking on
Clicking anything.
something. You're just moving. You're not like moving the playhead is the point. The playhead shouldn't
Right.
move. It's this like second thing that you can move around. So I get with the trackpad and I get with the pencil, but if you don't have one of those two things, I don't know.
So I'm over in Final Cut Pro here in a side window, and there is something that could potentially be the case here. Now, when you don't click over anything, when you scrub over with that secondary red playhead, the scrubbing line, I don't know what you call it, uh, it plays audio, but you can also grab the playhead and click it and move the playhead around, in which case it doesn't play any audio. So maybe it would be worse, but maybe you could grab the playhead with your finger and move it around.
Sure, but
Yeah.
technically that's a different action than scrubbing. Like it's
Yeah,
mostly the same thing, but technically different.
right. Now
And
you're
maybe that's
absolutely
just how
right
it
about
is.
that. So there's another thing here that I wanted to bring up, which is on this picture here for the Apple Pencil and keyboard, they advertise precise edits using Apple Pencil. Sure. Speed up your workflows by adding the Magic Keyboard for key commands. Yeah, powerful key commands that I would argue are probably next to necessary. What as close as you can get to being absolutely necessary. That is what they are. But look on the screen here. If you look at the very, very right of the timeline, what is that? Do you see? Oh God, hang on a second. Do you see that little tab that's open?
Yeah, I thought can you zoom in on it more or like
I
drag
could
like
try.
oh, what is
Oh
that?
geez.
Some sort
I'm
of
really
like
getting in here. I don't know where I'm lost. Oh,
oh
that made it smaller now. I'm
oh wait,
lost.
isn't
I'm
it
okay.
wait, go up one. I think it's on the one above it too.
You're right. What is that?
It looks like a knob, some sort of like dial or something.
Is that a volume?
Maybe.
Wait, but look, the icon in the center is like a playhead icon.
Yeah, but then there's like notches around it.
There are notches around it. And it's so this in this one it shows the leftmost notch. This one also shows that does look like a dial that you're supposed to turn. And it has one of the drag bars at the top. So it looks like it could be moved.
Hmm.
Let me
I
check
don't
chat
know.
here. Does anyone know? No one. Someone said Siri button for AI editing. Yeah,
Oh, geez. Imagine
I
Siri
would
editing a video.
imagine giving Siri your footage and saying like edit this. It
What
would just
footage would you like me to edit?
you'd get an exported it would you'd be like, all right, this video needs to be 10 minutes. Here's all my footage. And it would give you a 10-minute clip of like the Google search results for like how to edit.
I'd be impressed if it could even do that.
That's fair enough.
Yeah. See, I don't know what that thing is. And you know what
Oh,
else was interesting? If you zoom out or like go down to the text below this image, it very specifically talks about the Magic Keyboard or the Keyboard Folio, I think it said. And it was about how you can use key commands. They didn't say anything about the trackpad.
right. Huh. That's a good point. Someone said here that thing we were looking at, by the way, was the jog wheel. Perhaps that might be what you tap to bring it up.
I could see that. That makes
I kind of
sense.
thought it would be like a swipe in thing, but I guess that would interfere with the other iPad OS features.
Yeah, I guess I could. That would explain why it looks like a dial too.
Yeah, I guess it must be that. Here it is again. I don't like that it's there though. Like I feel like it's kind of in the way. Also, hang on a second. Where where where's the transitions? Like I'm trying to think of the Final Cut Pro layout that you've got on. This is actually a very good view of it, right? So there's project media, that makes sense. And
I think
then
it's
what looks
that.
like next to it is that's got to be titles, and I guess transitions and effects are all up there instead of having separate windows for them.
I think so, yeah.
Well, that makes sense. Also noticing now there's a third icon that's blue over here with that same logo. So I think that means you could probably tap that and the little window for the jog wheel would go away if you didn't want to use it.
That's kind of okay. I think I get it. I think the reason is the fact that you can reposition that little window is like that's where the jog wheel will appear. So you can put it at the top of the screen or the bottom, depending on. Because I was going to say, like, why tap the button to make the window appear and then tap the window to make the jog wheel appear? I guess it's so that you can move that little window, not window, but that little piece around and control where the jog wheel goes.
That makes sense. I could see that. If we keep scrolling here, it seems like, yeah, so there's project media, which I don't see the button that you would press in here, but presumably there is one for a multicam setup. Uh, Personally, I would be surprised if this is actually a usable multicam interface because typically you need a decent setup for that. But they really talked about it a lot. Oh yes, and then there was also this sync clips captured from for up to 4 camera or audio sources. So that I think is similar to desktop Final Cut. Switch, I do really like this, the way that you can just tap down on a little viewer down below. That's well done. This one confuses me slightly. I didn't look into it that much, but I guess this is just giving you a more detailed view of all of the audio sources for each of the clips. I'm not really sure what this would be useful for, though.
It seems like it's part of the syncing. Like one of the clips starts later than the other one. Maybe it's like a detailed view of how they all
Oh,
synced up and something. I
yeah,
don't know.
I could see that. That's fair. What was the other stuff that they had? Oh yeah, the fast cut. So this is where it started getting a little confusing here because they seem to almost indicate some level of like AI machine learning stuff. What it seems like here is that it's able to crop on a vertical, like take a widescreen format and vertically crop it and identify like where in the image it needs to crop.
Yeah,
But
looks like it.
does it automatically keyframe and keep that subject centered? Because that would be cool.
It's a good question.
So they also have like your classic like zoom background removal feature. Cool, like that. What they say for auto crop is intelligently adjust footage for vertical, square, and other aspect ratios. That is not very descriptive. So I don't really know what that means.
I don't know. I mean, it's the question that you had. Like, obviously, the first step is, crop it to whatever size. Then there's the AI of like determine where the actual subject is and crop it into there. But then does it actually keep Like, does it adjust the crop or keyframe the crop to keep it in there? That's a good question.
Because that's the difference between a completely useless feature and a very useful feature. I really hope that it would keep things centered and
Yeah.
wouldn't just work only on like a static shot. Because what? Although this is Apple and their AI is not the best, I should say. Voice isolation, cool, nice, we like that. Titles, transitions, and effects are all included here. I like a lot of these. I hope that they make their way over to the Mac. It's kind of weird that there's exclusive content for iPad, but anyway, lots of it too, by the way. Look at all these filters, new music, which I joked in my video. We haven't had new music in Final Cut since iMovie 11. That's when all of like the, 44th Street Long and all that jazz.
That's a classic.
Classic. There's backgrounds that are new as well. They kind of look like macOS backgrounds. I personally probably wouldn't use them all that much because, as soon as it's a stock background, everyone knows what it is. And eventually there will be third-party content. That is cool. And of course you can shoot with your iPad straight into the timeline, which I don't know why you would want to do that, but you can. Let's I feel like we've talked a lot about this. Let me switch over to Logic just for a second. You've probably honestly have used Logic more than I have, Noah.
I mean, I haven't used it very much at all, to be honest, but I've played with it a little tiny bit.
So the nice thing about Logic here is the requirements are more reasonable. You only need an iPad with the A12, which means, boom, baby, you can use a 5th gen iPad mini. Could you imagine?
That would... There's no way they would let this thing run on an iPad mini. That would look ridiculous.
Yeah, that would be... I mean, it said it just needs anything with an A12 chip. They didn't specify further.
That would be so funny.
I want to see if there's any hang on, let me go all the way down to the bottom. Which iPad? It says any iPad with A12 Bionic. So iPad mini, here we go.
Someone's going to do that, obviously, and it's going to be really funny. I want to see what that would look like.
Oh, that'd be so good. I would do that if I had an iPad mini. But I don't, because it's stupid. Anyway, so once again here, I honestly, I think Logic Pro makes more sense than Final Cut Pro for the touchscreen. Because obviously, like the way that they show this here, the touch to play, where you're like adding beats, having keyboards, that all makes a lot of sense. That is very touch intuitive. And I feel like this one, I could really see people actually using.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially because people have those physical, I forget what they're called, like the launch pad things where it's like all the little buttons and they map them and they do. And obviously, a touch screen is not going to be a replacement for like the physical buttons and knobs and stuff. But for someone who doesn't have all that equipment, it very well could be a replacement.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good point. Is obviously like when you look at really pro level people that do Logic Pro setups. I mean, we saw it in the first picture here. Like, look at this soundboard in the background here. That's some like serious doo-doo right there. Yeah. And a lot of people have a lot of physical control apparatuses that you don't typically see with Final Cut Pro. Final Cut Pro, keyboard and mouse is basically all you need unless you want to get really crazy or have like shortcuts. But with Logic Pro, people are plugging in instruments, keyboards, sound pads, those big soundboards with like your gain and phase. You can have like specific modules for it. Like it gets pretty intense. But this is good because if you're a smaller artist who maybe doesn't have the funding for that whole music studio, a lot of those features can be done for you on your iPad. That I could see being genuinely very useful.
Yeah. I think for me, like the thing that I keep going back to when we're talking about these is like you're comparing this, like it's cool to have Logic Pro and Final Cut Pro on the iPad. And we can talk about how, that makes the iPads even more pro, because I think that's an interesting discussion to have. But at the same time, I'm looking at this and thinking like this compared to a 13-inch MacBook Air, like, the current gen MacBook Air running Logic Pro or Final Cut Pro, right? That's basically, the most direct comparison you'd make. It's also very thin and light. If you're comparing the 12.9-inch iPad Pro to the 13-inch MacBook Air, it's not that much of a difference in terms of like the footprint. It's thicker, but it's not that much bigger. And then it's like, what's the point of having the iPad? And I can see more for Logic than for Final Cut, because in Logic, I feel like the touchscreen, there will be some drawbacks with the touchscreen, but there are also some benefits to a touchscreen that I feel like Final Cut doesn't have as much. And then I feel like there's even more, like if you're, a video editor, I can't imagine being a video editor and walking around with just an iPad and not just like, might as well bring a Mac. But like, I don't know, if you're a musician and you're just playing around, a lot of musicians use iPads for their like, sheet music or their chords or whatever, lyrics, whatever they need. So I could see them, just having an iPad and, hey, let's plug a mic into it and record a demo or, whatever. I could see it a little more.
No, that's a great point. I think the fact that it's open to more iPads, that means it's going to be a lot more accessible. Let's talk about the subscription model, because if we're talking about access and utility, and I would agree with you that Logic seems to be a little more promising, the question then becomes, what do we all think about this $4.99 a month thing? I'm curious to hear what chat thinks. It's $4.99 a month, or it's $49 a year. $4.99 times 12, by the way, $59.88. So you save $10 if you do an annual subscription. So $50 a year in perpetuity for as long as you continue to use it. What does everyone think about that? Because I'm torn.
Yeah, I think the question, first of all, people mentioned about how it's coming, that subscription price is coming to the Mac too. And so we'll definitely talk about that. But I think my first thought is, if Apple continues to update, I mean, Apple has updated Logic Pro and Final Cut Pro, like Final Cut Pro 10. I remember when it released 10 years ago or whatever, it was lacking a lot of features, and Apple's added a lot of features. And even recently, I think they added some like motion tracking stuff, fairly recently. So they have been doing some updates. But if Apple continues to update it and they continue to add, I could see them adding more like, titles and transitions and sounds. That can be like one thing. The other thing is adding more features. Obviously, maybe some of those Mac features like the motion tracking can make it to the iPad. If they do that to the point where it makes sense to have a subscription model that you're getting, it's improving, and so you're paying, more, and you're paying each month and it's improving each month or every so often, then I get it. If they're just going to release it and, just do little bug fixes or whatever, then it's just a subscription model. And it's like,
I mean, I think it's a hybrid. Because the thing that kills me is that Final Cut Pro on the desktop does evolve and get updates, and I only had to pay one time. I paid $200 in 2018 because I got the student bundle. And so you have to remember, like, okay, it's not that I think it's a ripoff, right? Adobe charges a lot more for their software because that's all they do, mostly. So $50 a year for Final Cut Pro is, I think they've fine-tuned this, by the way, because nobody's going to complain about $5 per month. That is nothing. People probably lose that amount of money all the time. That's one coffee per month. so insignificant. But $50 a year. I bought Final Cut Pro in 2018. I might have not bought it previous to that, perhaps. But
We won't talk about that.
that's fine. No one, it's what's the statute of limitation? I don't know. So call it 5 years. 5 years at $50 a year. Oh, well, wouldn't you know it? That's $250. That's more. I paid $200. I've already saved $50, and I'm not going to stop using Final Cut Pro anytime soon. You could argue very fairly, in fact, that Final Cut Pro has been underpriced. I don't think that's a mischaracterization. The fact that it's $300 and it's yours for life, you could have bought it 12 years ago, not paid a cent, gotten all these updates. You could very well argue that's the deal of the century.
The deal of
But
the
it does
decade.
stink. The deal of the decade. Very true. The deal of the decade, but it does sting a little bit with Final Cut Pro, especially that you pay ostensibly more money, and it's a compromise.
Yeah, and then people have mentioned in the chat, and I've read the discourse. Like, do you think that Final Cut and Logic on the Mac are going to become subscription services? And if so, how is Apple going to do that? Are they going to launch Final Cut Pro 11 and I guess bring a bunch of new features and then, also do subscription pricing? Is that the move?
God, I see. Here's the problem. I think Apple is in a corner because if they were to try introducing a new version of Final Cut Pro for the iPad on a subscription model, not that big a deal. If they were to try to do this on the Mac and make like a really big update, or I guess what they would have to do realistically is call it Final Cut 11 and just pretend it's a whole new version and say like now it's $10 a month. That would really bother a lot of people.
Yeah, it definitely would. And like, obviously I think you would pay for it because you use Final Cut a lot. And if they had, the right features to make it worth it, you
I'd be
would.
forced to. There's no other way. I mean, I guess in the case of, as we were talking about Final Cut 11, if they did that, then theoretically you could just keep using Final Cut 10. Sure. If they were to try to switch it, then it would
They
be.
can't do that though. They can't say if you already paid for Final Cut, maybe it's Final Cut 10 point whatever. I don't know what version they're on. Let's see. They're on version 10.6.5. So if they said 10.7 is going to have a subscription attached to it, then you could. My point is basically you could stay on the current version, whatever the latest version is before they make the switch. If they make the switch, you could stay on that version, and for a while that would be fine. And honestly, for a while, a lot of people probably would, because there was that whole thing. I guess this isn't really the same thing, but like when Final Cut 10 came out and it was missing a lot of features, a lot of people stayed on Final Cut 7 for I don't know how long, a year, 2 years, whatever, before Final Cut Pro 10 caught up. And then, eventually they moved over. So I could see maybe it's not a feature issue, but maybe it's like the price issue. Like, the one that I have right now is fine. I don't really need these new features. I'm going to stay with what I have. But eventually, the version that you have is going to get older. It's going to maybe not support some new feature or some new file format or some new resolution. And slowly but surely people are going to have to move off of the old version to this new one. And I just can't imagine paying $10 a month to have Final Cut when I like barely use it. Even if I paid only for the months that I actually use it, like there's something very different about paying for something once, even if it's very expensive, versus paying every month. It really is like a different mentality.
That's a very good point. Oh, God, I don't know. I really don't know what the solution is. I mean, in some ways, I think Apple is in a tough spot because they have basically missed the boat. Subscription software is all the rage, and Apple has just been sitting there like, we have to keep supporting this thing. They bought it 10 years ago, and they haven't paid us a dime since, and we're updating them all the time. Ah, geez. And like, yeah, sure. They get plenty of money from us Final Cut Pro users because we're always updating our Macs to take advantage of it. So, I'm not exactly crying them a huge river of sympathy here. But they probably want more than anything to change it to a subscription model and bundle it in with Apple One, Apple Pro software bundle. Oh, it comes with Apple Music. It comes with 2 terabytes of iCloud storage that's connected. You can edit off of your iCloud storage if you have gigabit Ethernet, something crazy and wacky like that. They want to do that. You just know. Oh, they should. Dude, if Apple was really serious about video editing, this is kind of unrelated, by the way, so I apologize. They really should offer cloud storage, local cloud storage. Like, tap into your home network, some special like Apple Magic mesh that allows you to edit and have like a magical box, an Apple box
Like a time
that
capsule.
allows, yeah, like a time capsule, but that you could actually edit off of, and like
That
have boatloads of storage in your closet.
that would be cool. That would be a pretty niche product, but I guess Apple does
I
love
would buy
video
it.
editors, and well, I'm sure you would. I mean, I could see some audience buying it. I don't think they would ever do that. I know it's just a hypothetical, but you know what I just thought of that I think this might be part of Apple's plan. So they're launching the Logic Pro and Final Cut Pro on the iPad with the subscription. I think that they're going to do that subscription is going to cover the iPad and the Mac. So whoever is subscribing to Logic Pro on the iPad or Final Cut on the iPad, eventually when they switch Final Cut and Logic on the Mac over to the subscription, they'll say, hey, if you already have a Final Cut subscription, then you get it for free on the Mac too. Or if you already have it for Logic on the iPad, you get it for free on the Mac too. And that's how they kind of backdoor a bunch of people that are subscribing on the iPad. And then they're like, hey, you get it for free. And then they're like, oh, I get this for free on the Mac. I don't even have to worry about it. Like that fixes that question for a lot of people.
They gotta hire you. You gotta work on their marketing team here, my guy.
Right?
You just cracked the case. Tim Cook is gonna be ring. Hello, Noah.
Oh,
What
yes.
an amazing marketing idea.
Wow, thanks.
And he's gonna shake your hand and go, ha, ha, wow, what an amazing Ruben.
That's my dream.
Could you imagine? There's nothing that would make me happier than if Tim Cook shook my hand and said, wow, what an amazing Miani.
That would be pretty cool.
It'd be a little weird. It'd be a little awkward.
Would be a little weird. I feel like he would do that. Like he would shake. He'd be like, "Wow, like I'm so glad that we finally caught you." And then they'd throw you in like Apple prison.
You know what they would probably do is have they'd have like a Mac underneath like a crate that's being propped up with a stick that has a string attached to it. And they'd like show it to me. I'd be like, ooh, what's that? And I'd go under there and then Tim he'd pull out the stick and then I'd get stuck in the crate and they'd get me.
He'd say, wow, what a dumbass.
Yeah. He'd say, good morning. Welcome to the prison inside Apple Park. We think you're going to love it.
Oh, God. Yeah, then that's it for you. We'll never see you again.
Yeah. I'd say farewell. The jig is up. they've got me with their. It would probably be like an aluminum crate with really great build quality. There's no way I'd get out.
They would have, dude, they would have the iPad, or sorry, the Mac Pro cheese grater things. Those would be the air
Oh,
vents. That's how the air would like
yeah.
get in. It would be like beautifully
Dude,
machined.
that would be diabolical if you think about it, because like you can't even really see out of that.
Yeah, and
So
it's like
it would
sharp.
allow, yeah, it's sharp, so you can't really like get that, you can't like be up against that all day long trying to get out. You could also it would allow for perfect ventilation as it does in the Mac Pro, but you would barely see anything. So you'd be like, you'd go crazy. Dude, I believe absolutely they've got one over there. That's where they put all the people that leaked the Apple Watch to John Prosser that was wrong. That's where they are. They're all in the little Mac Pro. It's like the what's the Severance, the break room. They have
Oh
that
yeah.
for sure. Have you seen, dude, have you seen in the keynote when it goes underground into the Apple Silicon Lab? Tell me that's not the Severance room. Tell me that's not it.
That's that's a good point. I'm sure someone will have to. Hopefully, we'll get like a the next event. We'll get like a glimpse, like the camera's going down there, and there's just a sign that's like, "Please help us. We've been trapped in here," and you just get to see it for like one frame.
What if what they're doing in Severance is making the M3 chip?
I mean, we don't know what they're doing,
We don't know what they're
right?
doing.
It could be.
They're in all those hallways, which are very confusing, kind of almost like the lithography of a CPU.
You think they're inside of an M3 chip?
No, I think that it's sort of a stylistic.
Symbolic.
Yeah, it's symbolic. Like Tim Cook was like Johnny Sruji said, what we should do is put all the engineers in this underground bunker that looks like a CPU, and they don't know what they're making. That way they can't leak anything. And if they do anything bad or try to like figure out what they are and who they are, we'll put them in this Mac Pro break room so that they can't see, or and they'll go crazy. And Tim Cook said, "Wow, what an amazing dystopian reality."
Yes, and then Apple used their vast lumps of cash, their vast bank account to make it happen. I believe it.
Yeah. I mean, they could. We all know they could.
They absolutely could. And you know what else they could do? I have two very quick topics or questions.
Okay.
I
Go
know
for
we're
it.
ending shortly, but getting back on track a little bit. The first one is 15-inch iPad. We haven't heard that much. I feel like there might have been rumors or maybe it was just speculation. We haven't heard much recently, but given that there are now these pro apps on the
Mm.
iPad, do you think there could be a 15-inch iPad sometime in the future? iPad Pro, obviously. What do you think?
I think, yeah. I think absolutely. Because now they've opened the door for iPads not being just like silly little screens. So I think it's decently possible.
Yeah, I think the big thing about these like Final Cut and Logic, the apps, the apps are what they are, right? We talked about how Final Cut, I'm very curious to for you. Obviously, I can't use it because I don't have, an M1 or M2 iPad, but I'm very curious for you to use it and see how the experience is. And maybe it'll be good, maybe there'll be some trade-offs, but like regardless of all of that, the big thing is like I think that this shows that Apple's taking the iPad a little bit more seriously than they were before, especially like the
Right.
iPad Pro. Right now that you can use pro apps on the iPad, it makes it a little bit more pro. So regardless of the apps themselves, it shows that Apple's taking them a little bit more seriously. Hopefully there will be some good updates in iPad OS that will make it even, an even better experience. And that would, if they do that, that would show even more of a commitment to, to that that Pro level. And so then maybe it makes sense that there could be a 15-inch iPad Pro that would be the real like Pro machine that you can run these Pro apps on.
That would be really. What if they did even like the more than an M2 chip? You could get all sorts of stuff going on in there. You could do 32 gigs of unified memory. I mean, I guess if it was an M2 Pro, it would need a fan. So maybe not that.
Maybe not, but that would be interesting. I mean, yeah, the fact that they're using like the Apple Silicon, like the Mac architecture, like yeah, they could put more memory. They could have like memory tiers or, you know, whatever. They could do upgrades like that. That'd be interesting. And then
that would be so cool.
The other question which someone asked in the chat, which I thought was good, is what about Xcode for iPad? Because we heard rumors about that. I think that was one of the things. John had some tweet a few years ago about, you know, Logic Pro, Final Cut Pro, and I think he mentioned Xcode in there, and we haven't seen Xcode yet. And I think that Xcode makes the most sense to have because you can actually write the code, you can write the app and run it directly on the device that you're writing the code on. Obviously, there's simulators on the Mac, and that's, you know, great. But like, especially for the entry level, and I know that there's the Swift Playgrounds app, but like for the more basic, you know, level, like writing an app and then installing it on the machine that you're writing it on and running it on that machine, like, I don't know, there's something kind of cool about that. So Xcode for iPad, could that happen?
That is a cool idea. I mean, as I said about the 15-inch, I feel like we kind of opened the floodgates here. You can do whatever now. I have to imagine, at the very least, somebody is working on it. I think you would need a keyboard for Xcode. I think that's safe to say. But I feel like somebody somewhere is working on that idea. Someone here said maybe that's a WWDC thing. And I think that's a good way to end this episode is if Final Cut and Logic Pro were announcements that in May that they didn't feel they should keep for WWDC, what the heck is going on at WWDC? These are some pretty major announcements. So, I mean, is WWDC that full that they had to cut this and do it beforehand?
It's certainly possible. I mean, it is also interesting that they're releasing it. I guess they figure like if they're going to announce it, they might as well release it. Like it's releasing before Dub, but I'm sure it's been ready and they're like, whenever they announce it, they're going to release it. Right. But it is interesting that like, yeah, that they did it before. I think, you know, the comment about maybe Xcode will come at Dub, that's what I was thinking. Like the fact that these apps came out, I mean, maybe, you know, I'm not saying that it'll definitely happen, but like Xcode is like, this is Dub, it's the developers conference. Xcode is like Apple's app for developers. And given that they just announced 2 pro apps, why not announce another pro app at Dub, one that's meant for developers at the developers conference? So I could definitely see it happen. And also to your point, the fact that we got these big announcements like ahead of Dub seems like there's going to be a lot of stuff going on. We've talked about like some hardware that we're expecting. Obviously, all of the new software updates. Maybe there'll be some surprises in there too, but it's definitely going to be packed.
That would be, dude, this is going to be an interesting one. It really is. So interesting, in fact, that we created an event the next day that you should absolutely go to. And if you don't, well, you know, I'm sorry that you're going to miss out on a once in a lifetime opportunity, because we're talking about an event that is so full that they released Final Cut Pro for the iPad, which is a feature we've been wanting for 5-6 years, and they didn't even put that in the keynote. Excuse? This is going to be a crazy one. I have a feeling we're staring down the barrel. We're eye to eye with an iPhone moment here, Noah. We are potentially 22 days away from the next iPhone reveal. like, and not iPhone like iPhone 15, like iPhone as a concept. That's if that's not exciting, then I don't know what is. And if you're excited, then where else to be than at Genius Bar Goes Dark? Am I
That's
right?
right. Yes, I'm sure a lot of the people listening have heard about the show in one way or another, but it is the day after WWDC. It is a live in-person event in San Francisco at the Regency Ballroom. It's going to be a once in a lifetime experience. It's the day after all of this stuff that's happening. We're going to be discussing all of it. There's going to be audience interaction. I've been working really hard on an app. Some of the longtime viewers may remember that we used to do polls on the show, which we will bring back at
Yeah.
some point. We should bring that back. But it's going to be that and so much more with this live audience interaction. It's a great way to meet fellow Apple fans and tech enthusiasts. You know, you can meet us if that's something you're interested in. And just, I don't know, I'm really excited to like watch Dub Dub, see everything happen, talk about it, and then do this show where we can like all, you know, really talk about it, see what the audience thinks, see what we all think, and just like, I don't know, it's gonna be awesome.
Dude, I'm so stoked. It is legitimately going to be one of the most fun things that we've done in a really long time. I mean, the only time that we've gotten to hang out with you guys probably wasn't even you guys, to be honest, because it was so long ago. It was January 2020, right before COVID. And as soon as we did that, we were like, this is awesome. We got to do this more. And then COVID happened, and we were like, well, shit, never
Yeah.
mind. But now we're finally at a point where, and it's hard, let me tell you, doing events post COVID, or very barely post COVID, if you could even call it that, is difficult to do, which is why we've been working on it for 5 months. But I think it's going to be worth it once we're all in that not stadium. Let's not,
Venue.
I don't want to oversell it, in that venue
Yeah.
together, all in the same room. Oh, it's going to be so special.
Yeah. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm a little nervous about 23 days away, but you know, we'll be ready
Yeah.
for it. We'll get there.
Will we?
We'll get there,
Hopefully.
I believe.
Anyway, hopefully we get there. But I'll tell you where we did get now, and that is to the end of the episode.
Absolutely.
I've been your host, Luke Miani.
And I've been your host, Noah Rubin. Have a great night.
Peace. Come to the event.